those who are listening to us for the very first time, I want to welcome you to our Writers Forum, where we call it Writing Time, where each and every time we get to engage with different authors, we get to understand and hear from them. What is it that they're writing about, their theme, behind the book, and also get to learn the snippets from these materials. Other than that, they also share their writing journey so that you can know how was it for them. And you, as an upcoming author, or someone who is very interested in writing, you can learn many things from them. I believe that there is what you can learn from a person whose learning never ends. So today with me, I have one of the very best authors in Kenya. Her name is Sandra. She has several books. She'll get to tell us what these books are, and also we get to learn. Thank you, and okay.
Thank you. I'm Sandra NEKH, NEKH. I'm a Kenyan writer. I'm also a filmmaker, and I've been writing officially. My first published book was in 2015. Yeah, so since I'd called myself a writer since 2015, but then print media, my first print media book is called Amir, and I printed it in 2018. Yeah, so from 2018 print media, but my first book to put out there and just see what people think about it was 2015, a series of novels called the Dissociate series. They were quite raw. Um, we didn't have proper editing, but it was experimental because before I wanted to write and give to an audience and find out what they think about it, I wanted to find out first if I can be able to write. So I wrote these books and I shared them. I had two previous attempts at writing, and the feedback was that I was too disjointed. The books were too disjointed because I took too long to write them. So I had a new methodology, and I used that in the new books. And now I put them out there to see what people think about them. And the feedback was good, other than editing, which then we didn't have like a way to edit, you know. So it was like just put it out there, see if you have it in you, and then from there, mess around. You have your feedback, you grow from there. So I believe it was an amazing experience to just put out your books, see that people can actually appreciate your storytelling, and then now build on that because now you have an audience that is ready to read your books, and then now move on to perfecting the art form.
That is amazing. And as you add, she had a first book in 2015. I don't know where 2015 you were. Honestly, 2015, I wasn't so sure I want to be an author.
Yeah.
And then we can get to hear from her from the first series of novels, then the second book was in 2018. And still there are others.
Yes. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Dissociate series was the first book. It was very contemporary, action, a bit of thriller. It was a book about identity. I think I was facing some form of identity crisis, especially after leaving school. I schooled in all Catholic schools, primary school, secondary school, and then went to public campus. So there was a shock there, and also schooling from a girls' school going into public school, and then in the bundus, eh?
Yeah.
So you can imagine growing up in Nairobi, then going to study in Kakamega. I school at Masine Muliro, and it was a bit of a challenge to adjust. So I think when I was starting my writing career, I was going through some form of identity crisis, and it was reflecting in my work. So it's a book about losing your identity and trying to find it. And this girl in the book, she loses herself so many times, and most importantly, I would like to say that it's a book about a girl who was kidnapped by a young girl to be sold as a sex slave. So the people who kidnapped her normally went for 16 years with her, but then she was, I think, 12. So when they kidnapped her, yeah, the kidnappers who kidnapped her, the ring itself, it was being run by an Armenian family, so they took her in. So from that perspective alone, a small young girl taken from the coast of Kenya, brought to Nanyuki, and raised in Nanyuki by a foreign family, kind of family. So that was the story. It was very complex, very ambitious for a first book that you want people to read. Ran across 3 stories, and those were incomplete. I have written the last 2, but I've not published them. I'm still wondering whether I should rewrite the first books, but yeah, I'm still thinking, so still planning. Okay, so after those books, I share them as ebooks on a site called Smashwords. When I was starting out, there was Wattpad.
Yes, we know what, but I used to use it in my school as well.
Exactly, yeah. So there was Wattpad, and for the life of me, for some reason, I just did not find it palatable. You know, the posting of small bits and pieces every other week. I just wanted to be done and post everything once. But then the more I think about it, maybe I should have done that. Though the site that I used was called Smashwords, it was also an online distribution platform, but here you'd upload the whole book. So I uploaded those books, and I got feedback, and people liked the stories, people resonated with the characters. And then maybe 2 years later, or maybe a year later, I started working on my next book, Amir. I was smarter, you know, I knew more about writing. I was more cautious while working on the scripting and the manuscript and the world building and the characters and putting them in their spaces. So Amir was a 100-page book, 100 pages, very brief, straight to the point. And there's a group of people called beta readers. You know beta readers?
Beta readers.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, these are people who read your book even before it's published, so that they can tell you whether the story works. Yeah. And they're not editors, so they are basically people who you trust to tell you the truth about your writing. So I got a bunch of beta readers from different demographics, ages, all these things, and they read through it, and I got a lot of feedback, and I amended a few pages, and then I posted it out, and then I was publishing on Amazon. I did not know any local publisher who could be able to publish the book, and it was self-published. So people are telling me, oh, you need about maybe 300,000 to print. Yeah, 300 books. I'm like, what will I do with 300 books? How will I sell them? It was very overwhelming, and I decided to go with Amazon. And before COVID, Amazon actually worked, because I believed it was very easy to use, the platform and everything, and they will send you a check. Yeah. Granted, I've never been able to get my money off Amazon, but then they would always find a way to send you copies of your book, so you'd be able to sell them locally. Yeah, so I printed the first book, and then I got a wider audience interested in it, and there were 60 copies. And I remember the 60 copies, the first day I got the books, page 1. You know, when you're so excited, the box comes, you open it, you see your books, and then you take one book and go to your room to read it, and page 1 has an error. And I cried, and I was so disappointed in myself. So we printed the wrong version. We printed the unedited version instead of the edited version. Yeah. So in terms of challenges, you can see how complex things can get. And I had cried, and my mom was very supportive, and my family, and they told me, you know, don't worry, it's your first time printing, things are gonna get better. And so 60 books went out. I got a lot of feedback, and I made the decision to rewrite Amir. So Amir now is about 300 pages, 6x9. So that's about 300 pages. A5, that's about maybe 250 pages. It's a bigger book, more stronger book. So after Amir, I wrote a book called Ophelia. Ophelia was also based on identity, but then I was also leaning towards psychological thrillers. I really like writing thrillers, so fiction thriller. So I did a lot of research into psychology. Luckily, in my schooling, both undergrad and postgrad, I've done a lot of theory, and psychology is one of my most favorite subjects. So it's Freudian based, and a lot of memory play into the psychosis of the main characters, Ophelia. who turns out to be just a persona. So you can imagine just an identity crisis on someone who's not even real, cultured by the society around her. So I thought that was very interesting. Yeah. So I wrote Ophelia, and Ophelia was such an amazing book. I haven't had a lot of bad reviews for Ophelia, so I really liked that about that book. And Ophelia also took me into adult writing, so it's a bit spicy.
Get my answer, that particular one, especially now it's a psychology thriller. I don't know if you guys are keen. She's the first non-fiction author we've had on board.
Yeah. And it's I'll tell you about how crazy fiction, writing fiction is in this country, where people believe in self-help books and books that make you money, you know.
And we, on our other end, we tend to feel like people believe in fiction books.
The statistics right now, Nuria Bookstore is where I sell my books largely. I've been trying to get into other bookstores to no avail, but then I'm still trying. And at Nuria, most of the books that sell well are non-fiction. Yeah, which is very interesting. So people in Kenya, they gravitate towards that. But that doesn't mean that as a fictional writer you give up on it. No, just push and let's start a renaissance of non-fiction writing, because right now, even if you look at the film trends, you know, there's a lot of redoing of old films, yeah, and a lot of making of adaptations of books into films. So there is hope for fictional writers. So we just need to keep at it, you know.
Because that's what I also wanted to hear from you when you mentioned the aspect of thriller. I was like, okay, part of some time translating your books to movies. Because right now, when we are in the generation of visuals, there are a lot also could benefit from the film of the set.
I've been thinking about the translation. Just to go back a little bit, Ophelia was read by, there's a book club called Read Between the Lines, and in January they read Ophelia. And one
This
of
year?
this year, January this year. And I met with them, an amazing group of women. I met with them, and one of the feedback I got was they felt the story was so visual and so vivid in their minds. They wanted it to be a film, and they asked me this question. And I told them that as a filmmaker who has done I've done a stream of films. I haven't worked on large feature films, but I've done at least 1 hour film. Yeah.
I've seen that film.
Yeah. It's feature film, but not like Hollywood grade 2 hour film, 1 hour 30-minute film. And those films were hard to do.
How so?
The scope of the project was just enormous. The budget was enormous. The timelines we took to shoot the films, about both films, we did one that was 24 minutes, and then elevated to a 45-minute film, 42-minute film, and then the longest one we did was 55 minutes, just about an hour. And all those films took more than 1 year to shoot and edit. And these are low budget films, so you can imagine getting the money to shoot, you know, high budget films. And the scope of the stories, if you read Ophelia, the scope of the story is very big. The characters are very complex. The scale of this project, there's even a chapter that is in Budapest. So it will need a big film company, large resource mobilization to be able to pull that off. But then, when I was writing the book after Ophelia, there are 3 more books that I wrote subsequently. I had so much time during that time because I was doing my postgrad, and in between there's a lot of waiting, and in between that time I wrote a bunch of books. I wrote TC, which is not published, so TC is not the actual name, but TC. I wrote another NS, not the actual name again, so I can't tell you the name because they are not published. Yeah. So NS, I wrote the 2 final chapters of the Dissociate series. All these books I wrote between 2018 and 2020. And
In 2 years?
yes,
Wow.
so I'll tell you the secret. ask me the secret at the very end. I will
will
tell you the
definitely would
secret.
love to understand.
Yes.
Because for fiction, I think it takes a lot of mental energy. You have to really visualize things.
Well, it depends on whether you visually inclined, as a thinker, yeah? Yeah.
Ah,
So after Ophelia and all these books, there was the sense of that maybe I am a filmmaker and not a literature writer. So there was that feeling because a lot of the feedback I was getting is very visual. You need to write scripts, but then where will I take the scripts? It almost feels like the industry is very closed off, and as a person who does work in the industry but not mainstream, on the periphery of the industry as an independent filmmaker and documentary filmmaker, so the fiction side of it I'm not really keen, or rather not involved in. So it really shakes up your whole mindset. You write this script for a 2-hour film. Where will you get the funding? Where will you get these locations? Who will produce it and be able to bring it to life? These are very complex stories. So when I was after the series of books that I'm releasing slowly over time, because right now I'm writing less than I did then. Um, the book that I wrote was called Eastern Butterfly. So that one we released it. And when I wrote that book, I was thinking of performance wholly. So not film, but theater, incidentally. So I wrote this book, and in my head I thought that maybe after it's done its run and it's stood out as a visual expression that could be shared on a stage, maybe a great director, can put it on stage. I always thought, I think of myself as an amazing director, but I would love to see someone else's interpretation of it. Yeah, so that's what it was. And Eastern Butterfly is incidentally my only book to be selected for the Library of Congress.
wow.
So that says a lot, thank you, about that story and that book. And it's the only story that I wrote that I can confidently say I wrote this book with performance in mind, and I really want to put it on the stage. That is the dream. Yeah. So I do think of translating them into films and theater for Eastern Butterfly, though it can also fit in as a film, as a feature film, but not me myself. I would love to be part of the production because I love film a lot. But then I would love to have someone else produce it and have me as a producer or an advisor on set, um, because there are certain things I would love to make a certain way.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, I'd love that.
that is quite nice. And the moment you mentioned Eastern Butterfly, my mind is on butterflies. So for someone who hasn't read that book, what is the theme behind?
Ah, Instant Butterfly is, it's so hard to I don't know how, do you find it hard to describe someone you're writing?
At times, I feel it's a little bit difficult, but at least I can have a theme around.
Okay, so a theme.
Yes, just like you mentioned,
Uh,
identity.
I'd say tradition versus modernity. Eastern Butterfly is a fictional book, fantasy, based on a fictional country that is between Kenya and Ethiopia. And the reason why it's called Eastern Butterfly is because the country looks like a butterfly. And I pulled that from the Kenyan map actually. If you look at it from a creative eyesight, it kind of looks like a butterfly.
Yeah, because of the edges.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I pulled that from the Kenyan map, and I put these people between Ethiopia and Somalia, and so we're looking at the northern part of Kenya. Yeah. Including the Chalbi. So the Chalbi is also part of the book. So situationally, you can think about those people and then the story. So Eastern Butterfly used to be a country called Kizigweti with an I, but then they had local conflict and they broke up into two countries, Mamor in the west and the Eastern Butterfly Kizigweti with a Y. Yeah, so Kizigweti and Mamor. So Mamor became more contemporary. They maintained post-colonial leadership systems and everything, but then Kizigweti went back, reverted back into chiefdoms and traditional kingdoms, African kingdoms. Now there's this conflict of the contemporary and the traditional in the Eastern Butterfly. And then so at this particular moment when the book begins, the two heirs of both kingdoms are dying, and they're essentially supposed to be replaced by their heirs. Yeah. So the two kings are dying, and they are supposed to be replaced by the heirs. But then the heirs are, one is a girl, and it's hard for her to take the kingdom because she's a girl. And then the other one is a young man, but then his father was a contemporary man who chose to have a child with a foreigner because he wanted the child to fit better into this new world, get a foreign passport, be lighter than his peers because he thought he'd look better, you know. So there's this clash of contemporary existence and tradition. I have told you nothing. All this is on the blab, on the back of the book, the back matter. So
Yeah.
so that's the story. And it's amazing because I had to do very intricate world building, including creating not only political systems but also a language. So for those of us who love Tolkien, you know, yeah. So I had to do a whole language, and incidentally, Eastern Butterfly is the prequel to TC, the book that will come later. So a whole fantasy world of series of books.
That's nice. And especially for you who is a lover of history, for you who is a lover of fiction books, because I believe that at some point we need a break. And there's someone who gets a break from music, there's someone who benefits from a break when it comes to books. Fiction books really works for me, especially when I need to, you know, get into fantasy, learn about how others write when it comes to fiction. Because I am a non-fiction author, and I'm always amazed by how you guys are able to cut up pieces from your one and keep us engaged, you know, the suspense and everything. So Eastern Butterflies for you. She also mentioned that these books are available at bookstores. So I really recommend it amongst the other books. You can have one, get to read through so that you also give a feedback even as we await the other publications. So maybe there's someone who is really aspiring to get into that particular field where you're in, and they do not know where to start, and they do not know how to go about it. But you've been there. I can imagine all the different things that you've gained enough knowledge and skills. So how can you mentor young authors? And also what would you say to them? As much as you've shared with us some tidbits of the challenges that you've experienced.
As a storyteller, as an author, you are a storyteller.
Yes.
So first of all, realize what it means to tell a story. Yeah,
What it means to tell a story. Just tell me the story.
yeah,
What it means to tell a particular story.
yeah. What it means to tell a story is you are going to impact lives. So if you write something, whether it's 1 page, whether it's 20 pages, whether it's 100 pages, whether it's even 700 pages, if I read it, do I get that feeling of, you know, something nudging in my world? If nothing nudges in my world, then that book is, that story should be revisited. Not entirely, though there is a story that I entirely scrapped, not because I didn't believe in the story, and now more or less I believe in it even more. But this was my first book. I took too long to write it, so it became fragmented. So publishing it like that meant that I would have to accept to give my audience a fragmented book because I took too long. You know, you change. So the other thing I'd like to tell you is if you can write your book in the fastest time possible, that would be amazing. I work with a timeline. This is a secret. I write a manuscript, original manuscript, within a month.
Wait.
Beyond 4 weeks, the most I can add is 2 weeks. So 6 weeks, 4 weeks to 6 weeks.
You're done
Manuscript.
with one.
Yeah. But note, original manuscript,
Yes.
not edited and everything. Just getting it from your head into exactly the rough draft. So 4 weeks to 6 weeks. I have found that works for me because I am a person who keeps reinventing themselves. So when I reinvent myself, the way I think, the way I talk, the way I express myself also changes. I'm also experimenting with genre. So as you can see, I have fantasy fiction that is tradition based. I have psychological thriller, Amir is thriller, TC is futuristic fantasy, touching on the old world and new world model. And after this whole AI revolution, what happens next? So it's a lot of experimentation. So in that experimentation field, also the way I write, the way I express myself also changes. Yeah. So yeah, I need to compress the writing time so that I'm not changing and the way I express myself while writing a book, and then all that illustrates in the book. So it does not work for all people. I have a friend, her name is Modoni Maina. She wrote Leaves of May. You should have her here actually. So Modoni, she writes, even up to a year, she can write a book in a year. I can't do that.
That's what I wanted to tell you because I have a friend who tells me the very first book he wrote for around 3 years. Which 3 years for me is quite a lot of time. And I also change over time. So when you mentioned 1 month, I was like, and there's someone who's writing within 3 years, Yeah, but I also understand that people are different.
Yeah, people are very different.
Yeah.
And I go a bit crazy. I have found that I have especially when I'm writing, I get like super concentration. Super concentration. So I can spend maybe in a day, a day, 24 hours, I can spend up to 18 hours writing. So I am not like those people who will write within like an hour and give up. I can write up to 6 hours straight. So especially if I'm in the zone. So it's just like just consist. Yeah. It's just it goes on, and my brain. That's how my brain has worked, and I think it's an advantage for me. There are people who can't do that. So it really matters the kind of person you are. So find out what kind of writer you are. If you can compress your timelines to be able to write within the shortest period of time, your first draft, and then store it away. Don't look at it. Write it, finish, then put that book God knows where. Don't look at it. And then maybe 3 months to 6 months later, come back and revisit it. And then by then, the story will have come out of your head a little bit, and you'll be able to see gaps and everything. Look at the gaps, fill them up. I always tell people, if you're writing a medical procedure, go to Mayo Clinic, research. Yeah, research helps push your story. It helps ground your work. Even if it's fiction and you're lying a little bit, lie with some physics in it. Yeah? Like a physics, a chemistry, actual physics, actual chemistry. That's what makes it believable. Yeah. And then, as I said, know why you're telling the story, so impact of the story, and then story structure. I always have this experimental approach towards story structure, whereby I want to feed you my experimental approach. But you see, my experimental approach may not work for traditional book readers. So always find that nice balance between experimenting and the tradition, because maintaining tradition is what gets people who are avid readers going to the bookstore and buying books, because they have a tradition with books. They know how a book begins, how a book ends. So there's the basics of book writing, the story, climax, the timeline of a story is basically the same, but then how we organize the characters within that timeline. So the beginning, the introduction of your characters, your spaces, the world they live in, how they interact with each other, the build up to the climax, and the anticlimax where now you are solving things. You choose whether to solve everything or to let your audience. So if you know that as a new writer, you can be able to do that. I also have a thing whereby I create the timeline of my characters and how they interact with each other. And then I write just one bit at a time. So I have my timeline of action points. So that comes a lot from, I think, being a filmmaker, writing scripts. So you have a timeline of actions, and then now when you're sitting down to write, you're not writing the whole book, you're just writing this action. So that way you can tick them off as you go. Yeah. So visually, I draw a timeline, I draw my action points, and then I just work on one action point at a time. Yeah. So that way, you know, when you're eating a cake, you don't grab the whole cake and you shove it in your mouth. No.
Yeah.
You cut small piece, you eat it, and then you eat as you go, right? Same exact thing. When you're tackling a book, you don't start writing the whole book thinking about the whole book as a massive thing. Take the whole book, break it down into action points, and then focus on every action point. And then now, a few action points may fall into one chapter, or even maybe one action point can be a chapter if your book has small chapters. I also have a general sense of what I want one chapter to look like, which is always between 25 and 30 pages. So I have a maximum of 12 chapters in a book. If I have more, 14, less, 10. And I have like a general range of how many pages I want in every chapter. That helps to organize me and my writing. In terms of mentorship, I do mentor people. I have a mentorship program called the 20 Film Portfolio. It's largely a mentorship of film projects, but then sometimes it spills over into books. It worked so well before when I was less busy, but then over the years I've become more and more busy, so it's a lot harder to mentor. But then I do give pointers once in a while, and also the artscape. I would say that if you want to write in this country as an author, you know it's very hard to sell books.
Yeah, it is. Writing is one thing and selling is another one.
Yeah. So are you able to live on your books entirely?
Right now I cannot. Yeah, 100%. I cannot. I need also.
Exactly. So I try to tell people in the beginning, before you pop, and you will pop if you have the right methodology, the right team behind you. Honest people who tell you the real shizna is there. They don't lie to you. So if you have honest people, a team behind you that supports you, you will pop. Yeah, at your time you will pop, and you will make those sales. But in the beginning, prepare yourself for quiet days.
Yes.
When your book is at the bookstore, the month is ending and there's no money in your account, and you want to call Bule and go like, "Hey, Vanessa, what do I do?
Yeah.
I need to make money." you know, I need more. I need more. You know, to be able so that these books can become adaptations. They need to be somewhere. You know, so you want to call the people at the bookstore and go like, "Hey, this idea, you know, help me. I'm struggling." So prepare yourself for the disappointments. One, your books may have errors. That one, prepare yourself because it will hurt.
Yes, it will.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, prepare yourself for disappointments. You may not make as much money as you may want to make in the beginning, and self-publishing is very expensive. Prepare yourself to handle that cost in the beginning if you don't have sponsors. And write. Everyone has a story to tell. Don't be scared. Everyone starts from nothing and ends up being someone. Exactly.
I love what she's mentioned, especially what she has told us, be prepared. Because when it comes with writing, you're also very excited that the draft is done, excited to be published. Wait until marketing gets there. Yeah, but since she has been in this field for some time, I know she will have some tips on marketing. brought another book for you to come and write and educate the audience. So now that you've got book at hand, how do you go about marketing? How do you go about making people know that they will get value for their money when they purchase your book? Because it's not about purchasing, you get the money, and the customer, the client gets value for the money through what she has shared, what you've written in the particular book. So actually I share on the aspect of planning and self-awareness is really, really important so that you can know for how long am I supposed to write, how do I do my writing, do I need research, do I need research. So she has several tips on how to actually work on a book so as a fiction writer, which I feel also borrows much from the non-fiction end because you also have to do research. Maybe even as we end, you can let us know where do we get to and also your socials so that in case any of our watchers get through this content they want to engage into you, can they get to you?
So my name is Sandra NEKH, NEKH. On social media, it's Sandra NEKH. That's Facebook and Instagram. And then on TikTok, it's Sandra_NEKH. And my website is www.sandranekh.com. And my contacts are there. You can reach out. And I'm looking forward to feedback. My books are available at Nuria Bookstore, which is on First Floor Bazaar. And also Eastern Butterfly is available at the museum shop at Kenya National Museum. Yeah. And also Amazon, yeah. All the books are available on Amazon other than my last book, The Burgundy.
That's quite nice. So if you're watching us from outside Kenya, you can purchase this material on Amazon. If you're a lover of history, you can also find that book at National Museum. But also Nuria, which is one of the very best bookstores where I also stock the books. You can get to find the books. The beauty with Nuria is that you can walk in, get your book, or also order, and they do deliveries. So let us get to read through Sandra's book. Let us share feedback, because I always say that right now we have an awakening. Kenyan writers are writing, and if they are writing and you're not reading, then we get to read through these books. So let us read and support one another as Kenyans, so that you can also get to bring in a revamp in the reading culture in our country today. So thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to subscribe and share. And I look forward to actually getting to engage with you in our other forums. And to Sandra, we really want to appreciate you for taking your time and sharing with us these tips, especially when it comes to non-fiction or fiction writing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.